Well, thank you so much, Chris, for joining me and with this workshop on mastering your 401k. How are you doing today?
Great. I appreciate you having me on. This is obviously a very important topic and one that I like to talk about a lot.
I could see. And actually, the timing's great because I know for us personally, it's open enrollment season. And with it comes this like huge packet we got here from HR about everything, including preparing for 2018, your 401k contributions. But I got a lot of questions on this, and I know you're the right guy for this. Before we start, I was wondering if you can kind of give us a background because you work with Blooom, and I met you guys in Dallas and love what you do, but I
hmm
know there's still a lot of readers and listeners that aren't familiar with the mission of Blooom.
Sure. Sure. Well, first off, Bloom, with spelled with three O's. We spend a fair amount of time correcting those spelling errors. So we came up with that word, that term. Obviously, it's not a real word, in hopes that it would be memorable. But I do think that might be a source of confusion sometimes when people hear the name and automatically assume it's Bloom. But Bloom with two O's is actually an online cosmetics company, so it's pretty
Ah,
obvious that you're at the wrong spot if you go to that one. So, well, my background, I appreciate you asking about this because I usually try to start off any talk that I give with really the why
yeah.
behind Bloom. It's very important to all of us that work at Bloom. Why we started this company. So
Mhm.
this for me goes back over 20 years. When I graduated college, I went to work right away as a stockbroker. They don't call people stockbrokers anymore, but I did back in the mid 1990s,
Mhm.
and worked for some of the very big Wall Street based brokerage firms. And then in 2004, my business partner and I left the big firms and started our own independent fiduciary fee only retirement planning company. And the niche that we were working in was one for people that were getting very close, kind of within spitting distance of the retirement finish line. And the other kind of classification of clients that we had is you generally had to have significant assets to even get in the front door of my firm. And towards the end of that time there, if you didn't have at least $1 million of investable assets, I usually wasn't taking on new clients less than that.
Oh.
And the reason why I say that
Mhm.
is more around the fact that of how much it kind of bothered me, and that is that my own mom and dad did not have enough money technically
Yeah.
to qualify, and I use that word intentionally, to be a client of my firm. Now, I obviously help them; they're my mom and dad, but had
Good
I
job.
not been in the business, actually my younger brother's in the business too, my mom and dad would have had no help. There wouldn't have been a financial advisor that was willing to sit down with my mom and dad, given, how little financial assets they had. And I thought, we're providing these, I'm a certified financial planner. I've been doing this now for over 20 years, and we're providing all this wonderful advice and investment management and reducing fees and helping them avoid taxes. And it's like these are the people that have already kind of arrived financially,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like that's not representative of most Americans. Most Americans don't have millions of dollars. And you can argue quite strongly that it's those people that don't have a gazillion dollars that really need the help from advisors the most. And I share that with you because that really became the impetus behind why we wanted to start a company like Bloom, why we wanted to try and build something to be able to help my mom and dad of the world
Yeah.
effectively. And so we kind of, going back about 5 years ago, when we first started this, I can trace it back to actually one email that I got from my business partner at the time, still is. Kevin emailed me late at night and he said, Wall Street has made a habit of running in the opposite direction of people with small accounts. Maybe we should build something and run towards them.
Mhm.
And I still, the hairs on the back of my neck still stand up when I say that line, because that kicked off everything. We looked at what was happening in the space with technology. We knew we had to use technology to be able to reach a large number. I mean, there's just
Mhm.
so many hours in a day. I can't meet with 1,000 people in one single day, but Bloom's technology can. And so we looked at what was going on. We looked at some of the online advisors, but nobody had built anything to be able to go in and manage the accounts for people that have these workplace retirement accounts like 401ks, 403bs, like what your mom has, what we were talking about before the show started.
Yeah.
There's like 90 million people today in this country that have a workplace retirement account, 90 million. And I think if we could somehow get 90 million people into a big, huge stadium, and if we could ask them to raise their hand if they felt confident that they knew what they were doing with their 401k, I know very few people would say, yeah, I'm confident. I know what I'm doing. I've picked the right investments and I've minimized fees. And the ones that are raising their hand that are saying they have, it's probably because they've got either access to an advisor like me, what I used to do, or they just enjoy doing it, have an affinity for it. But that's not most. Most Americans are like, I don't understand this, and I can't seem to find any help. I don't want to spend a lot of time with this. So from that angle, we built a company for, I'm sure we'll talk about this I can now say less than Netflix, because Netflix just raised their costs.
I got the notification of that.
So we used to say we charge the same as Netflix. So Blooom charges $10 a month, and you get access to a professional advisor, our technology, that will actually manage your 401k, make the choices, make the trades, keep it allocated, keep it adjusted for you. And that's, we're 5 years into the journey. We've got clients in all 50 states, almost $2 billion now that we manage. So that's the long-winded, probably more than you wanted to hear. But
Well, you touched on a lot of things that we're going to get into, because I got a ton of questions about 401k, specifically when you were saying like how confident people feel about 401k, because I was looking at the numbers. I wanted to get an idea, like what is the situation going on, and I saw that it was like a lot of people, the biggest mistake is like, I've invested, but I know I'm not putting as much as I can. And part of it is, like you said, they don't exactly understand the investments that come in a 401k. They don't understand all the benefits of a 401k. And so a lot of times they're underinvested. At the very least, some of them will invest because they want to get that money. Some of the companies offer a match. But like, for example, my husband, we got his, and this is just for the 401k part. We're talking about like 12 pages, and it's just difficult to go through this, sit down. I understand there's like regulations and things you want to cover, but I promise you, Chris, this will put you to sleep.
Oh yeah. Keep it by your bedside table.
Yeah, if you have insomnia. And I don't think people understand, like, there are so many great benefits to a 401k. This is something that is available to many Americans, but they're not optimizing it. So I kind of want to start off with that, which is, we hear about 401ks, there's IRAs, there's like all these different accounts, but what makes a 401k advantageous to the average American working at a company?
Yeah, sure. Let's just start with maybe at the beginning, what it is, why it's important. So the 401k, which is a terrible name, it's actually named after a code in the tax law, that they pulled out in the late 1970s. But effectively what a 401k is, and we might in our conversation today use 401k a lot, but it can also mean 403b if you're a teacher or a nurse or you work for a .org type company. It could also be a 457 plan. Some of your listeners may have those. Even a TSP plan, which is a plan that if you're a government worker, that's the name of the plan that you participate in. All of those are employer-sponsored retirement accounts. It's effectively a way in which employees at companies can take some of their paycheck today and make the very mature decision to defer that, meaning not take it in their paycheck, defer it into an account in their name. It's their money. They're not giving the money back to the company or the record keeper holding the money. It's their money. They're just choosing to basically defer it into this account with the intentions of using that as retirement savings. And so the reason why this is so dang important is I would guess that most of the people listening to this today are not going to get one of those things they used to call years ago a pension. So
Yeah.
my grandpa, when he
Mm-hmm.
retired in 1976, he got a pension, which means the company that he retired from, he was a
Mm-hmm.
pilot, sent him and my grandmother a check in the mailbox every single month for the rest of their life. My grandpa didn't even have to put any money into that. The company funded that all for
Wow.
them and then agreed to promise to pay that check in the mailbox for the rest of their life. And many decades
Yeah.
ago, that was the U.S. retirement system.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the retirement system today.
No.
Thankfully, our firefighters, our police officers, and our teachers, many of those folks will still get a pension. But for your listeners that are working in corporate America, 99% chance that they are not going to get that pension. Translation, all of the responsibility is on our shoulders now to save our own money
Mm-hmm.
into these retirement type accounts. And then, I'm sure we'll talk about today, if I'm going to part with some of my hard-earned dollars and make that mature decision that, hey, I know I'm going to need to save some money. I'd like to buy some things today, but I'm going to save this money for many years down the road. At Blooom, we feel like, dang it, that's a responsible decision to make. Let's at least make sure that money that you're foregoing into your retirement account, let's at least make sure it's invested and working for you. And you're not paying outrageous fees that you don't know about, which we'll talk about in a moment. Yeah. So the other benefits of the 401k is the tax code allows people to put money into their own retirement, this 401k, mm-hmm. before taxes are assessed. So what does that mean? If you make this much money, okay, mm-hmm. and do not participate in the 401k, all of this money is going to be taxed. Okay. Mm-hmm. But if you choose to take some of your money and put it into your retirement account, then only this much money is taxed. So by saving some of your own money into your own retirement account, you actually sidestep and avoid taxes today. So that's a benefit. The other benefit you get out of the 401k, 403b type accounts is that the money goes in, you get this tax benefit of it going into the account. And mm-hmm. then as it's growing while you're working, you're not paying any taxes on the growth either. The taxes don't come into play until years down the road when you retire and start to take the money back out of the account. Then you'll start to pay ordinary income taxes on that. The other benefit of the 401k, and you mentioned this, is a lot of times, not always, a lot of times the employer, as an incentive, will match some of your contributions. And so advice point number one today is everyone listening to this, please make sure if you are working at a company that provides a 401k or a 403b, make sure you know what the match is. What do you need to be putting into that account to get 100% of that match? In almost no circumstances should somebody be foregoing or giving up that free money. That's literally like your employer saying, we're going to give you a bonus, a little bit extra money, and you say, nah, you keep it. I'm good. So you never want to do that. So figure out what that match is. But I would say that's a good summary of the benefit of what the 401k offers. Now, do you want to dive into maybe the mechanics of how these, the kind of how you sign up for them?
I do want to kind of hit in what you were saying, fast forwarding to retirement, because I think a lot of couples are saying, okay, even if I don't get my 401k, I'll have Social Security. And I was looking over the numbers with that, and it was saying the average American Social Security retirement benefit is just over $1,300 a month. And for most couples, for most families, that's not enough to live on. And yet it was around almost, it was saying 43% of single retirees and 21% of married couples rely on it. Like 90% of their expenses and everything was dependent on Social Security. And so, like you said, things have changed with the retirement system, and that the burden is on us.
Yes.
We make these investment decisions. So we want to maximize it, because even if Social Security down the line remains similar, just the numbers, it's not going to work out. You can't live off of that. You mentioned, there are pensions in very few industries, but for the majority of us, it's going to be relying on our choices and setting it up now so that later we can have a semi-comfortable retirement. and hopefully
That's
even better.
that's exactly right. And then really, Social Security was never intended to be a pension. It was never intended to be like the ability to provide a comfortable retirement income. It was like literally meant to provide like a safety net at the very bottom, like just making sure people had something. And your statistic of $1,300 is spot on. I know my mom's Social Security is like $1,355 a month. And that'll increase a little bit as as they inflate those dollars forward. But the point, and you're exactly right, is that's not going to be enough. The thing that sometimes I worry about when we talk about, whether it's Blooom or other people talk about, they use the word retirement. I think I worry that sometimes people hear that word and they think that, oh, that's too far off, or it conjures up maybe an image that people aren't excited about. And so retirement is part of it, but I would say even more important than being able to retire, we talk to our clients all the time about having the ability to decide on your terms when you want to stop working. I mean, I think that because you may stop working at what you're doing now, and maybe you want to go travel the world, or maybe you want to volunteer, or maybe you want to start a business or something. At what point can you have enough financial independence where you control that decision? And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Sometimes you say retirement, people think about grandparents in rocking chairs and like, they're going to sound appealing, but having the ability maybe at some point in your life to really control your own destiny, that's what we talk more. I think those are the stakes that are at play here. And so, the 401k is a big part of it, is your willingness to make that mature decision at an early age and start contributing to that. And there's no amount of encouragement or mathematical stacks that I think you can show people. I think people just kind of have to come to that own conclusion and level of maturity that they're going to, no matter what, they're going to make sure they're at least contributing enough if there's an employer match to get that money. And then hopefully as time goes by, they're increasing their contributions, as hopefully their income, goes higher. It's easy to put off saving for retirement. It's easy to come up with a bajillion excuses. We're trying to buy a car. We're trying to buy a house. We just had a kid. There's always going to be those excuses that get in the way. And so starting early is important, contributing as much as possible. And then obviously making sure that you're not paying all these crazy, it's your damn money. Let's make sure that you're not paying a bunch of these dang hidden fees inside of this 401k. Let's do our best to strip those out. Let's make sure you're invested properly. All those things are important. It's certainly something that Blooom can help folks with.
Yeah. And why don't we get into that where, a couple, they're sitting down and they're saying, okay, we obviously do need to contribute more to our 401k. And a lot of times they're like, okay, well, how much do I need to contribute? And I feel like they're jumping in too quickly with that, because you got to, of course, define like what kind of lifestyle are you looking for retirement, or when you want to stop working, figure that out. But say they're sitting down, they're going to talk to HR and choose their investments. What are some things they need to keep in mind with investing in a 401k? Like where to begin, the steps and the process in that?
Well, first of all, the HR can't help them pick those funds. The HR are not, they might be kind of behind closed doors, but the HR is not a financial advisor. The HR is the one that's communicating the plan, but they're not the ones that can sit down, should not be the ones. Most of the time when I talk to heads of HR, they're like, I hate it when people come in and ask me for this advice, because they know that they're not supposed to be doing that. But before you even get to the point of like what to pick, let's talk about contributions and maybe how much to contribute. So This is probably the most common question we get asked. Any of our clients, by the way, at Blooom, if we're just managing at least one account for our clients, they get access included in that $10 a month fee to an advisor at Blooom through a digital interaction, basically. And they can ask licensed advisors at Blooom any of these money related questions. So don't ask the HR person. ask an advisor, and at
Now,
Blooom,
maybe
you
we
can get
should
access.
take a step back with that, with advisor, because that's a
Yeah.
very general term. But you guys, something that I appreciate, are fiduciary,
Yeah.
which means you have a responsibility to your client. So can you kind of just real quick, when, couples are sitting down and they're asking an advisor, what kind of advisor should they be looking for, in terms of like, we want to make sure that this advice we're getting is unbiased, is focused on us?
Yeah. One simple question that you can ask. And first of all, we're assuming that people actually are getting access to advisors. Remember what I talked about at the top of the show? There's a lot of advisors that won't even meet with people unless they have a huge account. But let's say some of your listeners, get access or meeting with an advisor. The advisor came to their workplace or the school to give they brought in pizza for everybody and did the lunch and learn. All they have to ask is this question. When you are giving me advice, do you legally have to act in my best interest? Let me repeat that, because it's almost shocking that that's the question to ask. When you are giving me advice, do you by law have to act in my best interest? It sounds crazy because you're like, well, of course an advisor would have to. But if they're not a fiduciary, they are not bound to, which means they can recommend products that are way more expensive for you, but pay them more commission. Okay. As a fiduciary, we have to put our clients' interests first. And so in the case of recommending things to our clients, it cannot be for reasons that help us out. It has to be for the client's best interest first and foremost. And secondly, when our clients come to us and they ask us questions about how much to contribute to a 401k, or if they should refinance their mortgage, or they're going to buy a car, should they lease or buy or pay cash, we're not making money on those transactions. And so the advice we give is in their best interest. There's no conflicts built into that. We're going to tell people what we think is the best thing for them. And unfortunately today, not every advisor is a fiduciary. There's a lot of debate going on in the country right now on how to change that, but there are still a lot of people giving financial and retirement advice that do not have to act in the client's best interest. It's kind of shocking, actually. So back to the couple that's thinking about contributions or 401k. So remember what I said earlier, first thing that must be done, figure out if your employer matches contributions and find out exactly how much you need to contribute to get 100% of that match to begin with. If you're thinking about increasing it above that level, we always tell our clients, if you are paying on credit card debt or student loan debt, we would actually say, do not put any more money above that amount into your 401k. The right thing to do is to tackle that burdensome debt. Get rid of the student loan debt as fast as humanly possible. Get rid of credit card debt as fast as humanly possible. So contribute just enough to get the match, and then nothing else. Everything else should be funneled in attacking those debts. If your employer does not match contributions, the right thing to do is actually not contribute to your 401k if you have credit card debt or student loan debt. A lot of people make that mistake. But we think the right thing to do is to free yourself of that debilitating ball and chain, that debt that people drag around for way too long. Having debt affects you financially. It affects you psychologically. And so getting rid of that as fast as humanly possible is always the right thing to do, in our opinion.
Gotcha. I know from personal experience, I agree, like psychologically, when we paid off credit cards, when paid off the car, it was like, this felt so good. And then when we didn't have the car payment, it was like, this money could be used. And we were so used to having that debt. It was easy in that sense that we could contribute more towards retirement, or give ourselves more options with that.
You know what debt really does more than anything? It takes away choice. It limits your choices. And I grew up in a household, I saw this firsthand. My dad, his entire career, worked in a job that he did not love. But my parents had debt, and they had a mortgage, and they had 3 kids, and they had cars and probably some credit card debt. And my mom and dad did not have choice on what they ultimately could do. My dad had to stay in a job that was not fulfilling to him because of this debt.
Mm-hmm.
And getting yourself out of debt liberates you to be able to do other things. You can go try other things. My dad used to always talk about wanting to start one of those restaurants that only served breakfast and lunch. He was a big breakfast guy. He used to make breakfast on the weekends for us, and would have loved to have started a business that just, did breakfast and lunch. But the situation financially that my parents were in, he didn't have that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so consequently, he spent 40 years doing what he didn't love. And I saw that firsthand. And so that's why I think it's so ingrained in me. When I talk to young people, even people still in college, I warn them about not getting into debt. Or if I get to talk to high school seniors or parents about to send kids off to college, and you better think long and hard about taking out $100,000 worth of student loans, because that's going to change your financial trajectory forever. And it's going to massively change your ability to have choice. That, you're not going to be able to graduate college and take some time off and go volunteer or travel or go work at a non-for-profit, or maybe you can't even become a teacher because you've got so much debt. You need to make more money, but your passion's really to become a teacher, but you're boxed in because of this debt. We're very passionate believers, even at the sake of the 401k, of paying this off. So say maybe your listeners are at a point where they're free of their debt, no credit card debt, no student loan debt. House debt's okay. House debt, as long as you've got a good rate on that. And those people maybe are having questions. We got a little extra money. We got our debt paid off. How much do we contribute? At that point, I think it's smart to start ratcheting up how much you are socking away in that 401k. Yeah. Because keep in mind, even some of the crummy 401ks, you're still getting the advantage of the pre-tax, that tax benefit we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. I would say still make sure, if you're debt-free, make sure you've got, we like to say, at least 3 months of living expenses sitting in a rat hole account, the rainy day savings account tucked away, forgotten about. The reason why that's important is if one of, husband or wife loses their job, got 3 months living expenses, that allows that person to take a little time to find the next job. You don't want to have to rush out and find something quickly. So have a couple, 2 or 3 months of living expenses tucked away. If that's handled, if they're not saving up for a down payment on a house or any big expense, then I basically say at that point, start to ratchet up those 401k savings at that time.
Yeah. So I love how you're laying this out based on different situations and scenarios. But let's say, even if they were just putting in enough for the match, part of the 401k is, where do you contribute? And different plans, different options that are out there. And they're not always great options, to be honest. It's whatever the company has within there that you can invest in. Mm-hmm. What are some, I guess, mistakes or things you see that people should avoid, and what should they look towards? What should they ask from their 401k provider? Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you a story to answer that question. So, and this was actually another one of the reasons why we started Blooom 5 years ago. So, I used to, just be living my life, whether I was standing, out in the front yard of my cul-de-sac with my neighbors, or I was at my kids', activities, one of their games or something, or just wherever. So many times before Blooom, I'd have somebody come up to me, and the conversation would go pretty much like this. They'd say, "Hey, Chris, you're a financial advisor, right?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And they'd say, "I've got this thing. I work at this big company here in town. I think they call it like a 40K1 or 401k or something. Yeah. And I've got money that's coming out of my paycheck. I think I signed up for it." And I'm talking literally how the conversation went. "I think I signed up for it. I've got money that's coming out of my paycheck and going into this account, but I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to invest in. I'm not sure if my company's managing it. I'm not sure if someone else is managing. I'm not sure what, can you help me?" is basically what they were getting at. And I said, yeah, of course, just take a copy of your statement and email it to me, and I'll take a look at it and tell you what I think you ought to do. So they'd send it to me, and I'm telling you, it's back to that story I was telling you earlier. It felt like 80 or 90% of the time, I'd look at my neighbor, my friend, whomever, their 401k statement, and it was just a jarbled mess of like no rhyme or reason. It was just like a collective group of a hodgepodge of funds with clearly no strategy. Or actually, in the case of my younger sister, when I looked at her 401k, she unknowingly had her entire retirement nest egg in the dang money market fund. And she didn't even know that it was uninvested. You know, and she had gone 5 years and had made like no money in 5 years. And it happened to be in a time period where the stock market like doubled in value. And like,
and you can't get that back.
Can't get that back. And I know my sister, she's going to need this money in a very big way. I mean, as I think I've made the point, my sister and I are not going to get an inheritance. So, I mean, it's on our shoulders, obviously, to save this money. And so my point is most people don't know what to pick. And the crazy thing is every 401k is different. You know, your 401k might be with Fidelity. Your next door neighbor's 401k could be with Fidelity, but the choices are totally different. Here's the other dirty little secret. You could be paying 10 times the fees in your 401k than your next door neighbor is. Because it's all based on like who the plan provider is, who the advisor was that met with the head of HR and sold them on the plan, and what fund, how much was the company, the employer willing to pay. We talked about this before we went on the show. You know, there's a way in which the employer can offer a 401k at very little cost on the employer's part. The problem is then all the fees are shouldered by the employee participants. And so, and this varies from company to company. And it almost sometimes requires a PhD to even be able to understand, okay, I'm sitting down with that, you know, that packet you showed me, you know, I'm going to sit down and figure this stuff up, and you spend time going through it, and you can't oftentimes even understand what the fees are of each of the funds or what you should pick. And these target date funds are like, they're the harbinger of all kinds of extra fees generally. And the way you can think about these hidden fees in a 401k is to analogous to termites in your home. You know, you can't see termites in your house, but if you've got them, and too much of them, they're there at work, you know, eating away at your house foundation. It's the same damn thing that's going on inside these 401k. Oftentimes you can't figure out what these fees are. They're eating away at your balance. They're taking away some of the money that's your money that you should have in retirement. So to answer your question, you either got to sit down, I'd say some night, hour or two, and really try and dig into this and do your own homework. If you've got enough jack in your account, find an advisor, you know, flash around, hey, I've got $500,000, and then most advisors at that point will help you. Or you can go to Blooom. And one of the things I would say about Blooom is everybody that's got a 401k, go and get the free analysis at least. It'll take you 3 or 4 minutes. All you have to do is know your first name, your date of birth, and when you think you might want to stop working. And you got to know your login credentials to your 401k. And if you know that, Blooom will provide a totally free health check on your account. We'll show you what the hidden fees are. We'll show you if you've got kind of the right mix of investments. If you don't, we'll show you. And then you can decide at that point, if you want to pay Blooom $10 a month, we'll take that over and make it better for you. We'll get you the more appropriate allocation. We'll make sure that we root out the fees, because the way we structured our technology and our algorithm is to find the lowest cost investments in your plan. You don't move your money anywhere. We're not moving money outside of the plan. We can't. While you're still at your employer, we can't move the money out. So we're going to make the best of whatever choices you have inside your 401k. And again, it's a $10 a month commitment. If you don't like it, if you don't think we're helping you, cancel it at any time.
Yeah. And now you're cheaper than Netflix. But I love this disruption with fintech space and everything that's going on. I love what you guys are doing at Blooom, because there's been so many studies about, the expenses, how they can affect long-term, what you get out at the end, but also there's no reflection that these higher expense, funds are better performers. It tends to be low cost index funds. And, just real quick, I was looking at the default that if you don't pick out where they send the money in my husband's 401k, I was looking at this return, and the fee was actually like 11 times more than the index fund, and the performance was worse.
Yes. Yes.
So
Isn't that crazy? Like in life, generally, as consumers, we think that, take cars for an example. Maybe that's not the best example, but I think this will work. Generally, you think if you pay more money for like maybe a Mercedes, you expect to get extra quality, whether it's the quality of the engine or even the leather on the seats, you expect that. And I think when we buy consumer goods, that's usually the case. It's like sometimes the exact opposite with investing, to your point. Like sometimes the highest cost funds are the shittiest, worst performing funds. And A, it should be easier to know what the expenses are. But B, a good kind of hack or a cheat, like if people are like, I'm going to do this myself, I'm never going to pay Blooom or anybody else to help me. If you want like a cheap hack or trick, going with index funds is a good way. Like if inside your 401k, just picking the index funds and allocating your money across those, that'll get you a good chunk of the way there. It really will. Of minimizing expenses, putting your money in the funds like we've been talking about that have tended to perform a little bit better than those higher cost funds. That's something. Even Warren Buffett, the greatest investor of our lifetime, talks about that frequently, that most Americans would be very well served to just pick a diversified basket of index funds and go with that.
Yeah, and because I think the reality is, and we'd rather do other things. We have more important things to tend to: our family, work, our community. And so like, if you're looking for an easier solution, index funds tend to be that solution. And then also it's nice. What I like about Blooom is that access to the financial, any fiduciary.
Yes.
That access is absolutely crucial because I do suggest going to certified financial planners and fee only, but as a reflection of the value they're giving, you're expected to pay up front. And so for some families, that might not be an option for them right now.
Right.
So I love this tech disruption, and I love what you guys are doing at Blooom. So guys, it's with 3 O's. When I was preparing for the workshop, I had autocorrect try to fix that every time. And so I probably will never spell the word Blooom correctly again.
Yeah, right. Every word when you're writing out like spoon and wood, like every word that has 2 O's, you'll start typing it with 3. That's what we do now.
Yes. So guys, please at least get the advice, the free analysis. Blooom, it's smart, it's affordable, it's simple. And if you're looking for something that works, check them out, see if they're a good fit for you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Thank you so much, Chris, for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining me for this little lunch chat.
I've enjoyed doing it. Thanks for having me.